your job is the first boundary that most women skip. Most women that I work with, they don't necessarily think that they have this boundary problem. They think the problem is that, they're tired, they're overwhelmed, they're managing their time well enough or as best that they can. But once we actually slow it down and really think about it, what's actually happening is you're being rewarded for being good at your job, and the reward is more work. The reward often comes with unlimited access to you. And so today, the goal, the intention, is to bring awareness to it. This isn't about fixing that problem. It's about seeing and understanding what's actually happening so that as we really start to go through this process and really start to do the work, you understand where we're coming from. You understand the foundation that has been set. You understand what we're working with, and essentially kind of like how we're going about this. And so before we can really dive in and really start talking about this idea of boundaries from this perspective, because new month, new theme, new topic, I want to make sure that you understand that the boundaries that you feel that you have to set, you have to understand that, let's put it this way, before we can really talk about boundaries, you have to actually understand that the boundaries you had or thought you had have actually disappeared. So essentially, we're almost starting fresh. And when you look at it from that perspective, and when you think about it from that point, this is where understanding your competence, the brain power, the mental capacity that you have, has quietly turned into overgiving. But before that, you don't even notice. And so when we look at it, we think about this idea of competence, this idea of being good at your job, being smart, being resourceful. I don't want to really say knowing it all because I don't want it to be viewed in this negative way. But this idea of having this understanding and this knowledge of being responsible, and as a result of being responsible, you're also responsive, has turned into this added and additional, invisible at first, workload. It gets to be where you look back or you sit back and you ask yourself, where or why has me being reliable, responsible, or even capable made it to where now I feel like I have all this other work? You become the path of least resistance, which means that you get asked to do additional things, or sometimes additional things are just put on your plate. And so sometimes there is a cost to being too productive, too efficient, too smart. Because of this competence and this capabilities that we have, we often jump in to fix things right off the bat. Oftentimes before someone else even identifies or says that there's a problem, we're already working on a solution. And I'm a solution focused person, so I get how that can be the case, and I get how we can get there because I am you and you are me. I understand what you say because I even got into this whole coaching world, this whole coaching business, this whole productivity and accountability coaching strategist because of people telling me for years, or asking me, I guess I should say, how do you do it all? They saw me showing up. They saw me being so confident, so capable, doing all the things that it was like, how? The comparison kicked in. But after you understand, or once you can understand how this knowledge, this insight has cost you, that's where you can then start looking at how it's caused you to overgive. Because like I was saying earlier, when it comes to like moving into this overgiving, like giving so much of yourself, your time, your calendar, your resources, you don't really realize that it's happening because you want to be helpful. You're not trying to gatekeep. You're not trying to hold all the knowledge, hold all the resources. You want to spread it. Because the more knowledge and information that I spread, the quicker you can get confident and you can get up off of me. But sometimes, and in the meantime, your confidence and your capability has turned into you overgiving of your time, your energy, and your resource in an attempt to bring them up to your level. And you don't realize it's happening until you sit back one day, you look around at one point in time, and you realize that this doesn't have to be normal. Like, is this actually my job? Because how many things are we doing day in and day out, week in and week out, that aren't actually in our job descriptions, that aren't actually our job? And that's where we have to start looking at and identifying, and more importantly, understanding the pattern. Because if you're listening to this and you're thinking, this feels familiar, I promise you it's not a coincidence. It's not by accident. This is a light bulb starting to go off. This is awareness starting to build. And that's why I said that today is about the awareness. It's about getting that initial point, planting that initial seed for you to really understand why being good at your job has cost you. And so awareness becomes that first boundary that you skip because you aren't even aware that it's a problem, because it is in you. It is your nature. It is your core. It is who you are as a person. And because of that, you keep showing up. Because of that, you keep giving. And so oftentimes in career, in work, honestly, even in life, we get to this place and we get to this point to where we look at overgiving, or we don't even, let me take that back. We don't look at overgiving as a negative because we don't realize that we're overgiving, because this very act of giving out this information has become so normalized. It's become, like I said, this pattern. And so as a result, we're often taught to like anticipate the needs of others. We're taught to like absorb their emotions. We're taught to accommodate their schedules. Let's look at it from me. Let's look at it from like a court perspective. I have to often anticipate, especially as a defense attorney, I have to anticipate what the state is going to say so that I can prepare my defense. I tell my clients all the time that being a defense attorney is reactive. There's only so much proactive work that I can do. Until I know what charges the state is filing, I can't really defend against them. I can see what they arrested you for, and I can say and think that this is what they might charge or they might not. But each charge has their own elements. And until I know what the charge is, I can't really anticipate where we're going to have strengths or weaknesses when it comes to the state proving or our ability to disprove these allegations. And as a defense attorney, like, we have no burden. Like, it's the state's job to prove my client or attempt to prove my client guilty. And so when I look at having to anticipate what's going to happen, how do I need to react, it takes time. But in the midst of having to anticipate this, I'm also dealing with a human. I'm dealing with literally a person's life. So I have to absorb the times where my clients are yelling at me. They're angry at me. They're upset with me. Now, typically, they're not happy with me until the end of the case, if then. And so I have to absorb these emotions, essentially. And because of the fact that I'm also in multiple courtrooms, I have to absorb different judges. I don't want to say their emotional state like in a negative way, but I have to absorb different requirements, different demands, different timelines or anticipations in the way in which they do things. And so again, I'm being, what's the word that I want to use? Like, I don't know the word that I want to use, but like, again, it's like coming to me for me to then have to disseminate. So if I have to anticipate my client's needs, I have to anticipate what the state is going to do. I have to absorb and deal with the emotions of my client, sometimes of witnesses, sometimes of judges. But then in the midst of that, I'm still left to accommodate. Because while I'm anticipating and absorbing, I then have to accommodate and look at my calendar and say, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? Where am I going to do it? So when I look at it from the point of, okay, I have to be in 3 courtrooms. I have to also have office time. I have to also go to the jail. I have to also sometimes travel to the other office or even out of state or out of county for depositions, trainings, meetings, whatever the case may be. And even in the midst of saying I have office time looks differently from me being truly in my office versus me being in my office and having to meet with clients, me being in my office and having to do depositions. And so all day long, I'm required to give, and give, and I'm being pulled in different directions. And it's kind of just expected that I'm giving because of that. But once you can see and identify the pattern, you can sometimes start to see the problem. And so while we're not trying to solve the problem right now, it's about getting clear or starting to get clear and identifying and becoming aware of where are the patterns? Where am I constantly or consistently, maybe for you it's the same, having to absorb different reactions or emotions, anticipate different needs, or where am I asked to accommodate? What does that look like? Because in time, this can lead to burnout. In time, this destroys your ability to understand your true capacity because you're being pulled in so many different directions by so many different people. So it's not even that this person is asking all of this of me. It's these people are asking, some of them, all of this of me, some of them little pieces. But once you put it all together, where are you? Because I talk a lot about wholeness and being whole. But wholeness is the whole you. And so when you look at life, when you look at work, when you look at business, when you look at the different parts that make up you, that is the whole picture. So if you're giving so much in one area of whether that be life, business, work, whatever, if you're giving all of this in this area, how much do you really have left for the other areas? And that's where capacity comes into play. Because once you start really seeing the patterns, again, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, all right, this is starting to sound familiar. This is the key, this is the clue, this is the hint, this is the ring the bell, whatever you want to call it. This is your seed being planted for you to start looking for the patterns. And it's because of that that you think that the reason that I'm not showing up, the reason that I'm not doing these things is for X reason. But the reality is that you didn't know that there was a problem, so you kept giving, and now you can start to see maybe that there was not a boundary there, or there was a boundary and it's eroded, or there was a boundary there and it's just not being enforced. The idea of me bringing this to your remembrance, bringing this to the forefront, isn't for you now to go and blame yourself. Awareness isn't about blaming yourself, self-blame, negative self-talk, any of that. In fact, the awareness is to empower you to see that something's got to give. Because once you can start to become aware and realize that something has to give in whatever area or whatever capacity that is, you can start to function from that place. And so, if nothing changes, what's going to stay the same? But here's the thing, again, this isn't about changing it right now. Because before you start rushing to change something, you need to make sure you're aware of what's going on so you can figure out what needs to change. I get you saying that, like, okay, something's got to change in terms of this, but we have to take this awareness and kind of drill more down to get more specific on what exactly it is that needs to change. Because until you can understand that and until you can get clear on that, we have a problem. Because you can't enforce a boundary, excuse me, that you never actually identified. You can't enforce a boundary that doesn't exist. You can't enforce a boundary that was never identified. So if you're realizing that in this, that there is this hidden tax that often comes about with being productive, because of all the giving that you're doing, you have this emotional labor because of you anticipate, you absorb, you're accommodating, you're being pulled in any in which in every direction. Like I said, this destroys your capacity, but it also has this emotional labor and this emotional tax on you. And because of the fact that you're being pulled in so many directions, you can't focus. And so being pulled and being available physically, emotionally, whatever the case may be, you are sabotaging your focus. And so when you feel bad for not being able to get things done, it's because you haven't had the capacity to sit and focus on one thing. You're being pulled in multiple different directions. And so your ability to show up, do the work, or follow through gets hindered and gets limited. And while this applies at work, think about how all these open tabs then trickle into life. Because the same way, when I'm saying you're being pulled and pulled in multiple different directions, I gave three main areas, but within those can be various things. I talked about work. I talked about business. I talked about life. And so if for you, you're being pulled so much in life that you don't have the emotional capacity to show up at work, to show up in your business, the same still applies. You don't have the ability to focus, to plan, or to follow through. And you think it's a you problem. And while it is a you problem in the sense of you are the specific person, it's not a you problem in the sense that no one else deals with it. It might just show up differently. And so we have to stop feeling that it can't change, or nothing is going to be different, or we can't keep living like this, or whatever the case may be. Like, we really have to get away from the point of comparing ourselves to other people, number one. Because if you feel, or if you think, let's put it this way, if you feel or think that you're productive on paper, but when you look around your life day in and day out, when you wake up, when you go to sleep, in the middle of the day, you find yourself exhausted. If you're living on energy drinks, if you're living off of coffee, like, the issue is not your discipline. The issue is your boundaries. The existence or non-existence or the enforcement of them. You can't enforce a boundary you've never identified. And so if this is hitting for you, and if I'm hitting at your gut, I'm sorry, but I need to bring awareness to it so that you can start to understand that something has to change. And so if you're listening to this, and if you're hearing this and you're saying, okay, it's not a motivation problem, I do want to do the work. It's not a discipline problem, I do want to do the work. You're starting to become aware. And awareness is the first step. You're not behind if you're starting to get aware. And so if this is landing for you, stay close. This month is all about boundaries. And while we're doing this overview right now to get clear on it, we're going to hone in. We're going to dive deeper. I've got something coming that's going to help y'all. Okay, fine, I'll tell you. There's going to be a boundaries webinar, like a workshop of sorts, to really help you with this. But throughout this month, stay close, because we're going to talk about what boundaries actually look like in these real careers, in these legal careers, in these day-to-day lives. And we're going to help you. We're going to help you. The idea behind this awareness is helping you to identify, what boundaries do I have? What boundaries do I need? What boundaries went away? And what boundaries do I need to build and or enforce? And so as we talk through this idea of boundaries throughout the course of this month, take this awareness and start honing in. We're not fixing yet. We're just starting to name the problems to give you that awareness so that you can start to see what needs to change. Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And so I want you to understand how being good at your job, being good, being smart, being, intelligent, being efficient is actually kind of costing you. And I'm not saying that to say don't do and don't be these things, but it's to give you awareness to make sure that you're operating within your capacity. And so I want you to understand as we wind up and as we wrap up that your competence, your knowledge creates more access to you. That over giving, over providing is a pattern that was learned with good intentions and from a pure heart. But how do you need to balance it? And because of that, your efficiency, your competency, your overgiving has led to this hidden tax when it comes to your productivity. Be aware, be mindful, be intentional. Being good at your job is good. It's all fine and dandy. But with that comes boundaries that we've often skipped, and now it's time to become aware of them so we can start to fix them. So comment below and let me know if any of this resonates for you or what resonates most for you, so that as we continue this conversation throughout the month, I make sure that I tap in and touch on whatever might help you most as we work to continue to dive in on this awareness, but as we start to unpack so we can start to fix this. Because we don't want to just be aware with nothing. What do they say? Knowledge is power, but applied knowledge, that's where the real power comes in. And so right now, we're getting the knowledge, but soon it's going to be time to apply that knowledge. So, are you good at your job? It's been Coach Lee, your productivity and accountability coach and strategist, here for another Sunday of Success Starter series. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, as we continue on this boundaries conversation and continue to unpack and take this awareness and go to the next level as we start to really work through the boundaries conversation when it comes to life and work and everything in between. So until next time, it's been Coach Lee and Coach Lee